Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AI Talk Show. I'm Asha Saxena, and today we're going to explore a topic that defines the future. We talk about technology, we talk about AI, but I think it's important to talk about humanity in the world of AI, how we prepare our next generation. I'm speaking at all these conferences, and a lot of questions that come to me from the audience is about the next generation and how this next generation is going to evolve, grow, learn, and what should be they focusing on in this AI driven world. AI is transforming everything from how we work, how we communicate, how we learn, and especially the next generation, how they're coming in. They've been born with this technology, we were having this conversation with some of the people, and they were talking about, can you imagine, from when we were younger generation, and we didn't have the social media. Now we're talking about ChatGPT, AI talking to you. Imagine the kids who are being born now might not even know the world that we lived in, where we didn't have, forget the social media, but AI talking to us. So AI is definitely having a greater impact with how we all interact, but also the education. I'm particularly passionate about education and healthcare. I always talk about that. I think health is so important, and how AI is going to transform the world of health services, but also education. How we can have the personalization where AI can actually become your tutor. So it's not just about kids or people who are going to school, but it's about anyone who's interested in education. The world is going to be changing. The goal right now is not about teaching machines how to think, but really help humans to think differently of how we're going to engage with this technology. And as we look forward for the next decade, and most important question will become is, how will AI change our world? But the question really will be, how will we prepare our children to lead in this era of AI? I think AI literacy is in a lot of our mind, and especially on LinkedIn, I see a lot of people talking about AI literacy. And in corporate world, that's a big topic about AI culture, the culture and literacy of AI. Not so much about technology skills, because we have AI to do the technical skills. It's about the life skill. It's about educators, policymakers, innovators shaping how we learn. How do we create this journey? How do we build the foundation for more inclusive, intelligent future? And all these topics, I can go on about these topics, but all these topics, I'm so glad that I have our guest today, Charlotte Dungan, who's the Chief Learning Officer at Mark Cuban Foundation, where she's leading nationwide AI program designed to make AI education accessible to students across the country. Charlotte, you're doing such an amazing work and empowering thousands of young children or young youth, young adults to explore AI not as something as a distant or intimidating tool, but really a tool for creativity and critical thinking and problem solving. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk to us about this important topic and all the work you are doing. But before we jump into really the discussion, I would love to hear about your journey, Charlotte the person, before we talk about Charlotte the professional. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional journey, and the work you're doing at Mark Cuban Foundation.
Okay, sure. So I actually started out as a web developer and database designer back in the dinosaur days of the early 1990s. And so I did that for 10 years, and then became an educator once I had children. And I looked around and I thought, where do I want to send these kids to school? And so I actually wanted to build a new educational culture and ecosystem. And then eventually, I did some entrepreneurial things related to education and out of school learning or museum education. And I worked at a public school as well for several years. I taught one of the first AI courses there in the state of North Carolina, helped develop computer science standards and that kind of thing. So I kind of merged this like love of tech and this educational passion into what I do now today, which is education for AI with high school students and their teachers. And we do that work nationwide in all 50 states with our teachers and in about 30 locations with students nationwide as well. So trying to make sure that those out of school learning opportunities happen in parallel with the in-school opportunities that students have.
I tell you that I think such a great time for kids to learn is in school. Even though I always say that we all need to be lifelong learner, but I think creating that impact early on is so critical. And education is changing. I spoke a little bit about that earlier as I was introducing the topic. Um, from the classroom style or the traditional style of teaching, AI has now become our helper. It's become a personalized tutor. So if I'm interested in a topic, I can go out and learn that myself. And I feel like it's such a great age for kids to explore more early on in their careers, to learn about, deep about, you know, just a, why is an equation the way it is, go deeper into why the concepts are what they are, really go deep into understanding the concept than just memorizing how we did when we were growing up. How do you see, I mean, you're seeing firsthand these kids learning about AI, but how do you see education evolving to prepare young people for an AI enabled future where the AI is going to be in our day to day life? The curriculum needs to change, how uh, AI is not just a subject, but a partner in how students learn or collaborate or innovate. What are you seeing as you are engaging with this education system
Yeah,
all
that's a
around?
great question. I think you hit the nail on the head, actually. You said the two different words that we tend to think about in our org. Mark and I spent some time this spring sort of thinking through the difference between students learning and having agency to design their future, be the next entrepreneurs or, community problem solvers. And they do that because they're having fun and they're invested in what they're doing, and they can use this technology to go further and faster. They have now a business partner and creator with tools that are readily available in every browser on every phone. But schools are a little different. They're an education system, and so some of the structures are they have to be thoughtfully designed. Like, they do have assessments, and we don't want to throw out assessments. We actually want to know that students are learning what we ask them to do. And schools also have an obligation to expose students to things that they might not otherwise want to learn. So we are going to ask kids to take chemistry, even if they've never had that opportunity before. And so AI has to be applied differently in schools, and that's why we have a separate student, out of school launchpad program versus the education system where we start with, thoughtful AI policy for classrooms, and we say, how do you want students to use AI thoughtfully for different types of assignments? How can you make that clear to them? What conversations do you need to have about AI that include things like data privacy and cybersecurity, to make sure that students are safe before they become power users. And then we equip teachers who we often see are behind students in technology, and so we give them like opportunities to use AI and understand what it's really good at and where it isn't. And then one thing I think that is important is that we connect back to the pedagogy and research on how learning happens. And that's a very early stage for AI. Like, we're still learning. So students are going to have these technologies for 15 years before we know best practices, but we can take certain concepts like lateral reading, which we know is the best way to combat misinformation or poor quality sources, and we can apply that to AI outputs and say, hey, don't just like take the output for what it is, but take some of those keywords or concepts, open up 3 new browser tabs, and look for a high quality source that's a university or encyclopedia or major news outlet like the BBC, and compare what you're seeing with that real world to make sure that the output that you got is factual.
Right. I do that too. When I teach at Columbia University, and we had recently had a faculty meeting, and we were talking about how should the students use AI. And I always say that we can't take ChatGPT or any of these large language models away from the students, because they're going to use that in the real world. So how do we make sure that these students use these tools as one of the sources? So really changing the way we teach now these students, because they have access to new tools. And so how do, as faculty, we show up, and how do we teach? I wrote the book, The AI Factor, and we have our institute called the AI Factor Institute, and we do faculty development program. And so I've been traveling around the globe, and teaching the faculty and developing the faculty on how they should be using this management framework, and teaching the students in all different areas, if it's law or health sciences or management or engineering, on how to use these tools as a management tool to deploy AI. But you can't restrain or restrict or put boundaries, but give them education on showing how to use these tools effectively, so they are a better professional. When they go out in the workplace, they know how to use these tools and be able to effectively deploy them for the value, for the purpose they are in. If they're an attorney, how can they use the AI tool in their field? So really thinking about that, I think, becomes really critical. So I agree with you completely. Is really using this tool as either one of the sources among others, um, learning how to use these tools as a framework to deploy these tools in your workplace. And then lastly, I feel that also changing faculty members or educators, changing the way they teach now, really thinking about knocking on their curiosity, like, let's talk about what you found from all these different sources, and how do you interact with that. So I do believe that one of the biggest challenge in AI is this, striking the balance between technical knowledge and creative application. And what I see is the most effective way is when you challenge your students to be more curious. So in your experience, what have you seen? How do you see that students see AI not just as something which is abstract, but means to solve a real world problem? It's not just a tool to play and have a conversation, but really be able to apply it to solve bigger problems. How can educators nurture the blend of logic and imagination? How can these educators, in your experience, that you are out there, that they're actually moving the students just from using AI as a technology to be able to solve problems?
That's a great question. First of all, I have read your book, The AI Factor, and I appreciate that it had such easy action items. You have a great checklist that you can just immediately implement. And that's kind of the key to what we do as well, is like when we do student programming, we're looking for 80% active learning. That means you can immediately, as an educator, assess, are you lecturing? Are you providing video content that's very much like sit and get? What we want to be is the sage, not the sage on the stage, but the guide on the side. And that AI can be that guide on the side as well. But in the AI boot camps program, we talk about students doing something for real. And so what we do is give a basic overview of AI tools and use, and then we immediately go into what are the best ways to do prompt engineering so that you get the best outputs. And then we compare across LLMs and say, well, like, which one is good for coding? Which one is good for creative writing? Which one is good for helping you, all the different use cases? Which one does math really well? And some of them can visualize graphs and some can't. And so by teasing out those differences between these technologies, you're already getting a more robust understanding. And then we dive into what we call career track explorations. And that's kind of what you were alluding to, is it's not just like for computer science kids, although we do have a track for computer science. We have activities in healthcare. We have activities in ecology and food security, thinking about environmental issues and applying AI to problems that students are interested in. We have a sports track, so we help students look at their own performance, either their personal performance or their team performance, and use AI tools to analyze and see results from AI on their own teams. And we also talk about the ethical issues of that. For example, what happens when some schools in a conference have access to AI review? And this is common. Volleyball teams have AI review, but not all of them. And so we get right at that, right at the start of student projects, we build in that ethical framework and review. We look at long-term impacts, 10, 20, 100 years. And then we help them both design their project and then do an ethical review at the end as well. Where did you get your data? What are the limitations of your data? All people have limitations to their data. So let's show how. How accurate is the model that you used or built? And we've actually just designed something new called a responsible use card that sort of elicits some of those ideas about transparency and privacy, etc. So I think the key is to work through a project that allows students to either do something for real or have a model or simulation of something that allows them to explore those ethical issues, create in a team, build something, and then evaluate it at the end.
That's great. And I think taking those students on that journey, and I love that you touched upon data, you touched upon ethics, responsible AI. I was at a conference and I was at a coffee table where some of the media guys were there and younger professionals there. And we were talking about, they were actually talking to each other about ChatGPT. And I kind of overheard, and then we lined up having this whole conversation about, and they're talking about, oh, how funny that ChatGPT can be silly, or it can curse back at you. And I said to them, I said, that's exactly how it is. If you give them negative feedback, it's going to reflect that back to you. It enhances the negative feedback. So it is so important that we become responsible in how we communicate with AI. It is so important for us. The kind of data we feed in is so critical. Understanding of the data, reinforcement learning, and understand how you deal with these tools. I did this TEDx and I talked about human upgrade, and I talk about how important it is that we show up as better humans, because these machines are learning from our behavior. So our behavior becomes really critical. So I'm so glad that you talk about that in your school system. So I'm going to move on, and I want to talk a little bit about, as we think about the journey of the students who are getting this education, and also the collaboration between school, industry, and communities. Getting these students ready, but this education doesn't happen in isolation. You want these students to have access to businesses, nonprofits, local communities, so they understand what role they can play as future leaders. So, can you talk a little bit about the partnership education, industry, community organization can help make AI education more inclusive, relevant, and future ready? Maybe some of the example, the work you're doing at Mark Cuban Foundation, where collaboration has helped, maybe access to AI or learning opportunities for these students.
Yeah, first I'll say our mission is actually teens plus AI plus partners, and that's what transforms the future. And so with those three things, that's what we see the magic sauce is. And what that means is that, our technologies are only as good or as bad as the people who create them. And I think you were alluding to that earlier, like these technologies can be employed in different ways. But the best way that they can be employed is by having folks work together in a system to bring together the change that they want to see. So for example, my organization has a systems thinking tool that brings together partners across the community. That would be the school system leader, the workforce development leader, the research or education, higher education pipeline. We've got there's 5 of them. These folks that want a certain change, industry leaders, etc. And we help them look through, like, if you make certain changes, what happens? Like, if you spend a lot more money in schools, what are the benefits and drawbacks of that? Or like, what if you forget to involve the community and you don't talk to parents about what their kids are learning. And it turns out you have to, sort of pull on all these levers to raise the community. But one thing I'm passionate about is helping kids stay in their own local space. So, especially in smaller cities, if a good job isn't there, students leave, and it pulls apart families, etc. So one of our partnerships is in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Fort Wayne has this really healthy ecosystem thinking about AI, and they have AI events regularly, monthly meetups. They have those workforce partnerships, education. They have a school system partnership, educating young people, and they continually bring innovation into their community, and they're seeing the results of that. And I think that's the key, is get the various stakeholders with different viewpoints into the same room and talk about, like, what do we need from AI and data, and how can we best prepare our students, but also like meet the needs of the workforce and meet the needs of the community.
And that's the best way to really teach a student to deploy, see the work they learn in school in action. And I think that's what prepares the next generation to lead, once they're engaging. And I think the educators, the leaders who are involved with the next generation, it is so critical that they are thinking about how they are building the mindset and the skills for these students to thrive in this world of AI. And now that we think about the AI and the world of AI and this new generation that's coming in, which we didn't grow up in that world, what skills do you think the educators, the parents, the adults need to think about that we need to cultivate in young people today? Of course, I think it's curiosity, resilience, ethical awareness becomes really critical. What are you thinking, or what are you seeing that is really helping young people to develop, to not just adapt to AI, but also lead responsibly in this world?
Yeah, the first thing for leadership is we find that, students who have a strong support system are the ones who are going to go the furthest. What we want to prevent is that digital divide. Kids who are just told, no, you can't use this technology. First of all, they're going to use it anyway, but they lose the guidance, right? And secondly, like, when they're given those tools, they can really learn or do anything. They become the creators. So creativity, I would say, is high on my list. I also think it's really important for adults to realize, like, we are not the leaders in this space. They are, and to
Yes.
get their perspectives and their they have really interesting things to say about technology, and they use it really differently from us. Like, kids don't use email. Like, they've just given it up. And so that's like an interesting development. They can create video content much faster than we can. They're very comfortable with digital editing and like image creation with AI. They see editing with words very differently than we do, and I think those are valuable perspectives for us to learn from. So I think when you build this like learning community, and we begin collaborating, not just like us down, but like them up too, they become leaders. And that we do that in our program. We have a special group of students called our student ambassadors, and they come and speak publicly. They lead trainings with other students who are at other schools. They promote boot camps. They attend as guidance. And those leadership opportunities are things that we can provide to any student, maybe to talk about AI, but maybe also just to talk about the importance of leading in your community. Those are all good things.
That's great. I do agree that I think creativity it's crazy, as you said, that these young kids don't use email at all, and they're building videos faster than we all can. And I think we as adults can learn so much from these kids because they're using AI a lot more than adults are using right now. And as we come to a close, I want to mention that there's one message that truly stands out as we have this conversation. It's the AI education. It's not about technology, it's about creative, empathetic, and positive, and looking to bring the positive change. I am very hopeful for our kids because they are going to be growing up with new tools, new technology, and new superpower, and they will be able to manage a lot of agents, manage a lot of co-workers who are not just humans, and be able to continue solving big problems. with that, I wish you all good luck in being mentor guides to these young adults, and giving your helping hand to make sure that you're reaching out and pulling somebody up, if it's at work or new hire or
Kids,
in
because
your
they are
community.
going to be growing up with
With
new
that,
tools,
Charlotte,
new
again, I want to thank you
technology,
for your
new
leadership,
superpower,
incredible work you're
and they will
doing
be able
to
to
make AI
map.
education accessible and meaningful. And to everyone else who joined us in LinkedIn Live, thank you always for listening. This show makes it special because you all join, and your questions and your comments, because your questions and comments gives us a lot of insight on what you want to hear. So please continue doing that. Also, look out for all the work we are doing at World Leaders in Data and AI, WILDA. We have awards, we have a leadership offsite. We do a lot of transition circles now that, a lot of people are looking to transition out of their jobs and new careers. So continue looking at all the work we are doing. I was inspired by the conversation today. I hope you are too. We'll have this kind of wonderful conversation, and we'll continue these discussions. So I'll see you next time. I'm Asha Saxena, and we'll hope to inspire you, engage you, and hopefully make the world a better place each day. Thank you.